Careful with the tray. Leela, Vanessa Hartwell said into the microphone, her voice sweet enough to make the ballroom laugh before the insult even landed. Some girls are born to wear diamonds. Others are born to carry them around on silver platters. Lila Hartwell stood frozen beneath the chandeliers of the Hartwell Grand, champagne dripping down the sleeve of her black server's uniform, while 200 guests turned to stare at the plus-size girl who was supposed to be upstairs getting ready for her own engagement announcement. The crystal glass she had dropped lay shattered near her shoes. Across the ballroom, under an arch of white roses, she had chosen herself. Preston Vale stood with his arm around her stepsister's waist. Vanessa was wearing Lila's ivory engagement gown, the one Lila had paid for in secret. The one still pinned slightly wrong at the hips because it had never been made for Vanessa's body. For 3 seconds, Lila heard nothing but the blood rushing in her ears. Then, the whispers returned, soft and sharp, slicing through the music. "Isn't that the older daughter?" someone murmured. "I thought Preston was engaged to her." Another voice answered with a laugh. Maybe he came to his senses. Lila tightened her fingers around the edge of the serving tray until the silver bit into her skin. Her father, Charles Hartwell, stood near the front table with a glass of bourbon in his hand. His face pale, but still. He looked at her, then looked away. That small movement hurt worse than Vanessa's smile, worse than Preston's hand resting proudly on the stolen dress, worse than the champagne soaking through the cheap polyester uniform Marjorie had handed her an hour earlier. Her father knew. He had known all along, and he had let her walk into the ballroom like hired help. That morning, Lila had still believed the party was hers. She had woken before dawn in her small bedroom at the back of the Hartwell mansion, too nervous to eat, and touched the black diamond ring she wore on a thin chain beneath her sweater. Her mother had left it to her before cancer hollowed out her voice and took her away when Lila was 12. "Never take this off," Evelyn Hartwell had whispered, closing Lila's fingers around it. "One day, when everyone tells you that you are alone, this will prove you are not." Lila had never understood what that meant. The ring looked old, almost severe, with a dark stone that caught no light unless she turned it just right. Vanessa used to call it ugly. Marjorie called it childish. But Lila wore it anyway, because it was the last thing that still smelled. In memory, like her mother's perfume and hospital soap. By noon, everything had changed. Marjorie Hartwell had entered Lila's room without knocking, followed by 2 stylists carrying garment bags that were not for Lila. "There's been a slight adjustment," Marjorie said, smiling with the calm cruelty of a woman who had practiced every word. "Preston's family is concerned about the optics. The press will be here tonight. Investors too. And we cannot afford confusion." Lila had stared at her stepmother, not understanding until Marjorie lifted the black server's uniform from a box and laid it across the bed. "You'll help downstairs. Just for tonight. Be gracious. Darling, nobody wants another emotional scene." When Lila whispered, "But it's my engagement party," Marjorie's smile faded. "No, Leela. It was an arrangement. Preston chose Vanessa. Your father agrees this is better for the family." Then she touched Lila's cheek as if comforting a child and added, "At least tonight. You can finally be useful." Now useful meant standing in front of Chicago's richest families, while her stepsister wore her future like a costume. Vanessa turned back toward the crowd, dabbing at her eyes, as if she were the one humiliated. "Please, don't judge my sister too harshly," she said. The microphone, carrying every trembling syllable. "Lila has always struggled when attention isn't on her. We tried to include her tonight. But sometimes, kindness gets misunderstood." A sympathetic murmur moved through the room. Preston lowered his gaze with the perfect expression of regret, the one he used whenever photographers were near. He had once held Lila's hand in the quiet corner of a hospital fundraiser and told her he admired her softness, her loyalty, her heart. Now he looked at her as if she were an embarrassing mistake. "Lila," he said, not into the microphone, but loudly enough for the front tables to hear, "don't make this harder than it already is." Lila wanted to ask him when he had stopped being ashamed of hurting her. She wanted to ask whether he had laughed when Vanessa tried on the dress, whether he had noticed the tiny pearl stitched inside the bodice with Lila's initials, whether he had read the engagement vows she had written and thrown them away. Instead, she bent down to gather the broken glass. Her fingers shook so badly. One shard cut her palm. Blood welled bright against her skin. A waiter she recognized. Marco from the banquet staff. He took one step forward, but Marjorie's glance stopped him cold. Lila swallowed the sound rising in her throat. The whole ballroom smelled of roses, perfume, expensive wine, and the lemon polish the staff used on the dance floor. She had helped approve every detail. The menu cards, the white orchids, the gold-lettered napkins that said Hartwell Vale Engagement Celebration. They had kept the celebration. They had only removed her name. Vanessa descended from the stage, dragging Preston with her, and stopped close enough for Lila to see where the gown had been clipped tighter at the back. "Oh, Lila," she whispered, still smiling for the cameras. "You're bleeding. That's so dramatic. Even for you." Then her eyes dropped to the chain at Lila's neck, where the black diamond ring had slipped free from beneath the collar of the uniform. Vanessa's smile sharpened. "Are you still wearing that depressing little thing?" Before Lila could step back, Vanessa reached out and hooked one manicured finger under the chain, pulling it into view for the nearby guests. "Look, everyone." She kept Mother Evelyn's pawn shop ring. "Isn't that sweet? Some girls inherit beauty, and some girls inherit whatever this is." A ripple of laughter spread behind her. Lila grabbed the ring, holding it against her chest. And for the first time that night, anger burned, hotter than shame. "Don't touch it," she said. Across the ballroom, near the shadowed entrance to the private elevator, a man in a black suit stopped moving. He was not one of the guests, not one of the servers, and not one of Preston's polished college friends. He had the stillness of someone trained to notice danger before it spoke, his gaze fixed on the ring in Lila's hand. The laughter around Vanessa faded from his face, as if he had heard a gun being cocked. He turned slightly, lifted his phone, and spoke one sentence in a low voice. "Mr. De Luca, we found her." Lila did not hear him. She was too busy staring at Vanessa, at Preston, at her father's silence, at the stolen dress, and the stolen party, and the stolen version of herself they had dressed up for public approval. But Marjorie noticed the man. Her champagne glass paused halfway to her mouth, and for the first time all night, fear cracked her perfect expression. Preston must have seen it too. because his grip tightened around Vanessa's waist. "Security," he called, forcing a laugh. "I think Lila needs some air." 2 guards moved from the side doors. Both men Lila had known since she was a teenager, sneaking leftover desserts from the hotel kitchen. Neither would meet her eyes. Vanessa leaned closer, her voice dropping into something cold and real beneath the honey. "Go quietly. Lila, you already lost the fiancé. Don't make Daddy lose the hotel, too." That sentence landed strangely. Lila looked at her, confused. But Vanessa only smiled wider. Marjorie stepped forward, blocking the photographers. "Darling, you're overwrought. Let's not embarrass ourselves further." Ourselves. Lila thought bitterly, as if the embarrassment had ever been shared. The guards reached for her arms. The tray slipped from her numb fingers and hit the marble with a ringing crash that silenced even the string quartet. Then the ballroom doors opened. Not politely. Not with the soft glide of hotel staff, but with the heavy certainty of men who had never asked permission to enter any room in Chicago. Conversations died, one by one. The guards let go of Lila before touching her, instinctively stepping back. A tall man in a black tailored suit crossed the threshold, his dark hair brushed back, his face calm in a way that made the air feel dangerous. Behind him came 4 men, quiet and watchful. But no one looked at them for long. Every eye returned to the man in front. Dante DeLuca did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The name moved through the ballroom in frightened whispers before he reached the center aisle. Marjorie went white. Preston's confident smile vanished. Dante's gaze passed over Vanessa in the ivory gown without interest, then settled on Lila, on the blood in her palm, on the black diamond ring clenched against her chest. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the faint scar near his jaw and the cold fury controlled behind his eyes. For one impossible moment, Lila forgot the cameras, the laughter, the champagne soaking her sleeve. Dante looked at her, not like a servant, not like a scandal, not like a body too large for someone else's approval, but like a person whose pain had been witnessed and counted. His voice was quiet when he asked, "Who did this?" No one answered. Vanessa gave a nervous laugh and stepped forward, gathering the stolen gown in both hands. "Mr. DeLuca, I'm Vanessa Hartwell. I think there's been some confusion. This is a private family celebration." Dante did not look at her. He reached gently toward Lila's chain, not touching, until her fingers loosened by instinct. When he saw the engraving inside the ring, something final moved across his face. Then he turned to the silent ballroom and said, "Who made my bride carry a serving tray?" The word bride did not echo through the ballroom so much as detonate inside it. Lila felt every face turned toward her again. But this time, the laughter had vanished. Vanessa's lips parted, then closed, and then parted again, as if she could not decide which lie would sound prettiest. Preston stepped forward first, because men like him mistook expensive suits for courage. "Mr. DeLuca," he said, smoothing his jacket with trembling fingers. "I don't know what you think you've heard, but Lila is not well. She's had a difficult relationship with reality since childhood. And tonight, she clearly..." Dante turned his head just enough to look at him. Preston stopped speaking. The silence that followed was not polite. It was the kind of silence that warned everyone in the room that the wrong word might become a lifelong regret. Lila stood between them, blood drying in her palm, unable to decide whether she had been rescued or claimed. Dante removed a white handkerchief from his inner pocket and held it out to her. He did not touch her hand. He waited until she chose to take it. And that small restraint unsettled her more than if he had dragged her behind him like some Mafia prize. "Press it against the cut," he said quietly. Lila obeyed because her fingers had started to sting, not because she trusted him. "I don't know you," she whispered. Dante's eyes flickered, something unreadable passing through them. "No," he said, "but your mother did." Before Lila could answer, Marjorie stepped between them with her best society smile, though the pearls at her throat trembled. "Don't she? Darling, whatever arrangement you believe existed, Evelyn was ill for many years. She said many confused things near the end. This poor girl clings to fantasies because grief made her fragile." Lila flinched. Marjorie had always known exactly where to press. Dante looked past her, his voice cold. "Move." Marjorie did not move fast enough. One of Dante's men shifted, barely a step, and suddenly she stepped aside, as though the marble beneath her shoes had cracked. Vanessa recovered first, lifting her chin, eyes shining with manufactured hurt. "I understand now," she said, letting the microphone catch her voice again. "Lila called you here, didn't she? She couldn't stand that Preston chose me. So she brought a criminal into our family celebration to frighten everyone." A few guests murmured in sympathy, because Vanessa knew how to feed them a story before they had time to think. Preston wrapped an arm around her shoulders, playing the protective fiancé with sickening ease. "This is exactly what we feared," he said. "She has been unstable for months. Obsessive. Jealous. She kept insisting the party was hers. Even after I ended things privately." Lila stared at him. Ended things. He had kissed her forehead 3 nights ago and promised he was only nervous about the cameras. Charles Hartwell finally moved, and foolish hope rose in Lila before she could kill it. Her father crossed the ballroom slowly, his face lined with strain. She waited for him to say one sentence. "My daughter is not unstable. This party was arranged for her. That dress was hers." Instead, he stopped beside Marjorie and said, "Mr. De Luca, I don't want trouble in my hotel. My hotel, not our family's hotel. Not Evelyn's legacy. Not Lila's inheritance." Dante's expression hardened. "Then you should have protected what was entrusted to you." Charles swallowed, but did not answer. Vanessa leaned into Preston, hiding a small smile against his lapel. Lila saw it, and felt something inside her go very still. She had spent years begging for scraps of belief from people who profited from doubting her. Suddenly, the ballroom seemed too bright, the roses too white, the music too soft for what had been done. Dante turned to Lila. "You're leaving with me." The command snapped her out of her numbness. "No," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness of it. A ripple moved through the crowd. Dante's brows lowered. Lila held the handkerchief tighter around her palm and lifted her chin. "I won't be passed from one family arrangement to another like property. I don't care what my mother signed. I don't care what ring you recognize. I'm not leaving because a man I've never met walked in and called me his bride." For the first time, Dante looked almost caught off guard. Then, slowly, a trace of respect entered his face. "Fair," he said. Vanessa laughed. High and nervous. How touching. She rejects you too. Mr. De Luca. That's what Lila does. She ruins everything. Then acts wounded when people finally protect themselves. Dante's gaze sharpened. But Lila spoke first. You're wearing my dress, she said. The words were not loud, but they cut cleanly through the room. Vanessa's smile faltered. Lila pointed toward the small pearl sewn inside the bodice near Vanessa's heart. Visible, where the gown pulled slightly from being altered too quickly. There's a pearl under the left seam with my initials. L to H. I had it added because my mother had the same thing sewn into her wedding dress. A photographer lifted his camera. Vanessa slapped a hand over the seam. That proves nothing, she snapped. Forgetting to sound innocent, Preston's jaw tightened. Marjorie moved quickly, signaling to the hotel's security chief. Enough. Lila needs medical attention and privacy. Take her upstairs. Dante stepped in front of Lila before the guards could approach again. His voice dropped low. The next man who reaches for her without permission loses the hand. Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. And yet, even protected behind him, Lila felt trapped by the same question. Why had he come now? After years of silence, Dante escorted her out through a side corridor, not touching her back, though his men formed a wall between her and the cameras. Behind them, Vanessa began crying for the guests before the doors had even closed. Lila heard her voice break beautifully. I only wanted my sister to be happy. I don't know why she hates me so much. Then the corridor swallowed the sound. The service hallway smelled of bleach and warm bread, familiar enough to make Lila's throat ache. She had grown up in these halls, hiding from galas, where Marjorie said she was too awkward to attend, helping kitchen staff plate desserts, because workers had treated her more kindly than family. Dante stopped near the linen room and looked at her cut. That needs cleaning. Lila laughed once. Bitter and small. That's what you want to discuss. His eyes held hers. No, but it's the only damage I can fix in the next 30 seconds. That almost undid her. Not the declaration in the ballroom. Not the threat to the guards. Not the way Chicago's most feared man had silenced Preston with a glance. It was the plainness of that sentence. Lila looked away before he could see her eyes burn. Why did you call me your bride? She asked. Dante took a small black card from his pocket and handed it to her. On it was an embossed crest, a black rose circled by a serpent. The same mark was engraved inside her ring, because Evelyn Hartwell made a contract with my father 15 years ago. A protection vow. If her daughter was endangered by the Hartwell estate, the De Luca family would intervene. Lila's stomach tightened. Protection vow doesn't mean bride. Dante's face became unreadable again. In my world, sometimes it does. She recoiled. He noticed. I did not write the terms. Lila. And I did not know they had been activated until tonight. Activated by who, she demanded. Dante did not answer immediately. That hesitation told her enough to make anger rise again. You don't trust me either, she said. His silence deepened. Finally, he reached into his coat and removed 3 folded letters, each sealed in a plastic evidence sleeve. For years, I received these through your family attorney. They carried your name, your signature. They said you wanted nothing to do with my family, that you considered the De Luca name beneath you, that you intended to marry Preston Vale and dissolve any claim tied to your mother's contract. Lila stared at the letters as if they were snakes. Her handwriting sat at the bottom of each page, close enough to be believed by someone who had never watched her write. "I didn't send those," she whispered. Dante studied her face with a focus that made lying impossible and truth feel dangerous. "I believe that now," he said. "I did not believe it yesterday." Before Lila could respond, the hallway doors burst open behind them. Marco, as the bunkered waiter, hurried in, pale and breathless. "Miss Hartwell," he said, then glanced nervously at Dante. "I'm sorry. Mrs. Hartwell is telling everyone you threatened Vanessa. They're saying you brought Mr. DeLuca to extort the family. Preston is giving a statement outside." Lila felt the floor tilt. Dante's phone buzzed. One of his men showed him a screen. A video was already spreading, Lila gripping the ring. Dante arriving. Vanessa crying. The caption read, "Heartbroken sister crashes engagement with Mafia. Intimidation." Lila watched herself become a villain in real time. Vanessa had moved faster than grief. Marjorie had moved faster than truth. Her father's statement appeared next. Short and polished, the Hartwell family asks for privacy during Lila's emotional crisis. "We love her and are seeking help." Lila read it twice. Then something in her chest broke cleanly into ice. Dante reached for the phone, but Lila pushed it back toward his man. "No," she said. "Let me see what they're doing." There were comments already. Hundreds of them. Strangers calling her desperate. Too bitter. Pathetic. Someone posted an old photo from college. Cropped, cruelly, to make her look larger. Lonely. Easier to hate. Preston's family released a statement, implying she had misused hotel funds. Marjorie's friends wrote that they had worried about Lila for years. Every lie had been prepared before the party began. This had not been improvisation. This had been a public execution with champagne. "They wanted me to react," Lila said slowly. "They needed me to look unstable." Dante's expression darkened, while Lila looked back toward the ballroom doors. Behind them was the stolen dress. A stolen fiancé. The stolen celebration. And her father holding his precious silence like a shield. "Because something else is missing," she said. "Something bigger than Preston." A door opened down the hall, and Mrs. Alvarez, the hotel's gray-haired operations manager, stepped out of the linen room. Her uniform was immaculate, but her eyes were wet. She had worked for Evelyn Hartwell before Lila was born, and was the only person in the hotel who still called her Miss Lila without pity. "Your mother told me never to interfere unless they made you serve at your own table," she said. Lila stared at her. "What, Mrs.?" Alvarez pressed a folded slip of paper into Lila's uninjured hand. "There is a safe behind the old housekeeping schedule board in the basement office. Code is your mother's birthday." Her voice dropped. "I kept copies, receipts, camera backups, trust, transfers, not everything, but enough to start." Dante watched her carefully. "Why give this now, Mrs.?" Alvarez looked toward the ballroom, where Vanessa's sobs had become performance. Because tonight, they stopped pretending they were family. Lila's fingers closed around the paper. For the first time that night, fear and hope became indistinguishable. Dante offered to send his men, but she shook her head. No. I know the basement better than any of you. He looked as if he wanted to argue, then stepped aside. That choice mattered. Together, they moved through the service elevator into the lower level, past laundry carts and old banquet chairs, until Lila reached the cramped office where staff schedules yellowed behind plastic covers. Her hands trembled as she pulled the board loose. Behind it was a small safe she had never noticed. She entered Evelyn's birthday. The lock clicked open. Inside lay a stack of bank statements, a bridal boutique invoice in Lila's name, a flash drive taped beneath a folder, and a thick envelope sealed with black wax. On the front, in her mother's handwriting, were 6 words for Lila. When they erase you. Lila did not open the envelope right away. For several seconds she only held it, staring at the black wax seal as the basement office hummed around her with old fluorescent lights and the distant thunder of laundry machines. Her mother's handwriting looked exactly as she remembered it from birthday cards and lunchbox notes. Graceful, but firm. Every letter slanted as if moving forward, even when the words were still. Dante stood near the door, guarding the narrow hallway, while pretending not to watch her hands shake. The flash drive felt heavier than it should have in her palm. The bank statements were dated over 6 years, each page showing transfers from the Evelyn Hartwell Trust into accounts Lila had never seen. Some were labeled renovations, some consulting, some emergency family stabilization. One transfer, dated only 2 weeks before, matched the exact cost of the engagement party upstairs. Lila whispered. They paid for Vanessa's announcement with my mother's money. Dante's jaw tightened, but he did not look surprised. That angered her more than if he had been shocked. You suspected this, she said. He picked up one of the statements without touching the envelope. I suspected fraud. I did not know how personal it was. Lila laughed softly. But there was no humor in it. It was always personal. They just found legal words to make it sound clean. She broke the wax seal before fear could stop her. Inside was a letter, a small brass key, and an old cassette tape labeled Lila. My brave girl. The sight of the tape almost brought her to her knees. Evelyn had used cassettes because she distrusted hospital recorders and phones after Marjorie started visiting too often. Lila remembered her mother pressing stop whenever footsteps approached. She had thought it was paranoia born from illness. Now she understood it might have been the clearest thing Evelyn had ever done. They did not play the tape in the hotel. Dante insisted the basement was no longer safe. And Mrs. Alvarez agreed with a fear that made Lila finally listen. They left through the loading dock, where Chicago's night air slapped cold against Lila's damp uniform. A black SUV waited, with its engine running. Lila hesitated before getting in. If I leave, they'll say I ran because I'm guilty. Dante opened the rear door but kept his hand on the frame, blocking no path. If you stay, they will have you photographed crying in an employee hallway and call it proof. He was right. And she hated that he was right. As the SUV pulled away, Lila watched the glowing windows of Hartwell Grand shrink behind them. Somewhere inside, Vanessa was probably repairing her makeup. Preston was probably practicing concern. Her father was probably telling himself silence was not betrayal if it kept the business alive. Dante took her to a restaurant with no sign, tucked beneath a brick building in Little Italy, where the front door opened only after a camera scanned his face. Inside, the place was closed to the public. All dark wood, red leather booths, and framed photographs of men who looked like they had built Chicago with one hand and buried secrets with the other. Lila should have been frightened. Instead, she felt the strange exhaustion that comes after a wound becomes too large to keep bleeding politely. A woman named Sophia cleaned the cut in her palm without asking questions, then brought her tea and a soft black cardigan to replace the soaked server's jacket. Dante set an old cassette player on the table between them. "We can wait," he said. Lila wrapped both hands around the cup. "I have been waiting my whole life for someone to tell me the truth. Press play." Evelyn's voice filled the room thinly at first, then clearer, fragile but unmistakably alive. "Lila, if you are hearing this, then they have done what I feared they would do. I am sorry. My love, I tried to leave you money. But money, without protection, becomes bait. Charles is not cruel. But weakness beside cruelty becomes cruelty too." Lila covered her mouth. Dante looked away, giving her privacy inside a room full of his people. The tape continued. Evelyn spoke of the trust, of Marjorie's early attempts to redirect funds, of a family lawyer who had started bringing papers to her hospital room when she was too medicated to read. Then came the name De Luca. Evelyn said Dante's father owed her a life debt after she hid his youngest son during a police raid that had turned into an assassination attempt. "I did not sell you," Evelyn whispered through the tape. "I built you a door." Lila cried then, but not the way Vanessa cried for rooms full of cameras. Her tears came silently. With one hand pressed against the table and the other locked around the black diamond ring, Dante did not interrupt the recording. Evelyn explained the vow. If Lila's inheritance was stolen, if her legal identity was manipulated, or if the Hartwells attempted to marry her off to dissolve the trust, the De Luca family could trigger a protective claim. The word bride appeared only once. Attached to an old-world clause Evelyn admitted she hated, but could not remove without losing the De Lucas' protection. "The promise is not meant to own you," Evelyn said, her voice breaking. "It is meant to force dangerous men to stand where your father might not. When you are strong enough, choose for yourself." The tape clicked off. For a long moment, even Dante's men seemed afraid to breathe. Lila looked at Dante through wet lashes. "You said you received letters from me." He slid the evidence sleeves across the table. Under the softer restaurant light, she could see what panic had hidden before. The signature looked close, but the L curved too sharply. The Hartwell, too narrow. Vanessa had copied her school forms for years, signing permission slips when Marjorie did not want Lila attending events. Lila had forgotten that Vanessa had not. "She wrote these," Lila said. Dante's expression darkened. "I thought your rejection was arrogance. Then, indifference. By the third letter, I thought Evelyn had misjudged you." The honesty stung. "So if you had seen me on the street yesterday, you would have walked past." Dante did not soften the answer. "Yes." Lila absorbed that like another bruise, smaller than the others, but real. "Then don't ask me to be grateful, just because tonight you finally looked closely." "I won't," Dante said. Something in his voice made her look up. He was not apologizing like Preston would have. With polished regret and empty eyes, he looked like a man admitting to a debt he intended to pay in full. "I was wrong about you. That mistake helped them. I cannot undo it. but I can put my resources behind what you choose next." Before Lila could answer, his phone rang. He listened, without speaking, and with every second, his face grew colder. When he ended the call, he turned the phone so she could see the screen. Vanessa was live on social media, seated in the Hartwell library with Preston beside her and Marjorie holding her hand. Her eyes were red. Her stolen gown, replaced with a modest white sweater. "I forgive my sister," Vanessa said softly to thousands of viewers, "but I am afraid she has fallen under dangerous influence. We found irregular withdrawals tied to her name." The next post came from Preston's father, announcing an emergency legal petition to freeze Lila's access to all family accounts pending investigation. A third notification showed an article already drafted around anonymous sources, Hartwell heiress linked to Mafia-funded trust scheme. Lila felt the old helplessness reach for her throat. But this time, it found no place to settle. She picked up the bridal invoice from the folder and laid it beside the bank statements. "They're using my name because the theft is already under my name," she said. Dante nodded once. "Elliot Crane filed documents this afternoon, claiming you authorized the transfers. Then we need the originals. My men are watching Crane's office." Watching is not enough. Lila stood, still in the borrowed cardigan and server's shoes, her face pale but steady. Vanessa doesn't destroy things herself. She makes someone loyal do it, then cries when they get caught. Tonight that someone is Elliot. They reached Crane's downtown office 20 minutes too late to stop the fire alarm, but not too late to see the truth of Lila's prediction. Sprinklers had soaked the reception area. A junior clerk stood shaking near the elevators. Clutching a box of files she claimed she had been told to shred before the alarm malfunctioned. Dante's men secured the hallway, while Lila knelt in wet carpet and opened the box. Inside were copies of the letters sent to Dante, trust amendments, and a recent affidavit declaring Lila emotionally unfit to manage inheritance assets. At the bottom was a sticky note in Vanessa's handwriting. "Make sure the signature looks heavier." Lila held it up without speaking. Dante photographed it, then turned as Elliot Crane stumbled from his private office. Shirt sleeves wet, face gray. He saw Dante and stopped. He saw Lila and looked terrified. That fear told her he had never believed she would come for herself. Elliot tried the same tone adults had used on Lila since childhood. Gentle and dismissive. "Lila, this is complicated. You don't understand the legal exposure." She stepped closer, water dripping from the ceiling into her hair. "I understand my name was used to steal from my trust. I understand my mother's contract was hidden. I understand Vanessa forged letters to keep Dante away. What I don't understand is why you thought I would stay the girl crying in the hallway forever." Elliot's mouth opened, but his phone buzzed on the desk. Dante picked it up before Elliot could move. A message preview from Vanessa glowed on the screen. "Burn what you have to. Tomorrow at the gala. Lila ends." Lila read it twice. The words should have frightened her. Instead, they clarified something. Vanessa was not trying to survive a scandal. She was preparing a final performance. Madame, Mrs. Alvarez was missing. Her apartment door had been forced, but not broken. Her phone left on the kitchen counter. The flash drive backup gone from the hiding place she had described. Lila stood in the tiny living room, staring at a framed photograph of Mrs. Alvarez with Evelyn at the original opening of Hartwell Grand. Guilt pressed hard against her ribs. Dante's men found a message taped beneath the coffee table. Written, in Mrs. Alvarez's careful hand, if I disappear. Check the ballroom server camera, not the main system. Vanessa always forgets the staff, sees everything. Lila folded the note and slipped it into her pocket. Dante watched her face. We can move you somewhere safe. Lila looked toward the window, where Chicago was turning silver with morning. Safe is what they call the cage when they're the ones holding the key. The gala was scheduled for that evening. Vanessa would stand under new lights, in a new dress, with Preston's ring on her finger, and half the city waiting to applaud whatever version of truth she sold them. Marjorie would smile beside her. Charles would stand in the background and choose silence again, unless someone forced him to hear what silence had cost. Lila returned to the restaurant and laid every piece of evidence across Dante's table: the tape, the statements, the forged letters, the sticky note, the invoice, and Mrs. Alvarez's final clue. Her uniform from the party hung over the back of a chair, stained with champagne and blood. She touched the black diamond ring, then looked at Dante. Tonight, I don't want you to announce anything for me. He studied her for a long moment. What do you want? Lila's voice did not shake. I want my ballroom back. By 6 o'clock that evening, the Hartwell Grand had been polished so brightly it almost looked innocent. White orchids climbed the ballroom columns. Violin music floated beneath the chandeliers. And every investor, journalist, charity, board member, and society wife who had whispered about Lila the night before had returned to watch the Hartwells repair their image. Vanessa understood spectacle better than truth. She had turned the reopening gala into a memorial for family dignity, a performance of grace after private pain, and the invitations had promised a special announcement regarding the future of the hotel. Lila watched from the service corridor, where she had stood less than 24 hours earlier, with champagne on her sleeve and blood in her palm. This time, she wore a simple black dress that fit her body without apology. The black diamond ring sat on her finger, no longer hidden beneath her clothes. Dante stood beside her. Silo. Dangerous. And still enough to feel like a locked door. You can still let me handle the first move, Dante said, his gaze fixed on the ballroom entrance. Lila looked through the crack in the door. Vanessa was already on stage, dressed in pale gold. Preston at her side. Marjorie seated near the front, like a grieving queen. Charles stood behind them, his posture stiff, his face older than it had looked yesterday. That's what they expect, Lila said. They expect me to hide behind you so they can say I was brought here by force. Dante turned to her. And what should I do? The question held no pride. No, come on. Lila appreciated that more than she wanted to admit. Stand where everyone can see you, she said. But don't speak until I ask. A faint smile touched his mouth. Gone, almost before it appeared. I can do that. From inside the ballroom, Vanessa's voice rose warmly through the speakers. Thank you all for believing in our family. Vanessa was good. Lila had to give her that. She stood beneath the lights with wet eyes and steady hands. Every inch the wounded younger sister forced to protect a legacy from instability. Last night was painful, she told the crowd. But pain can reveal who truly loves a family and who only wants to possess it. Preston touched her shoulder at exactly the right moment. Cameras flashed. Marjorie lowered her eyes. Charles stared at the floor. For too long. Vanessa continued. My sister Lila has struggled under pressures. None of us fully understood. We tried to shield her. Even when she made choices that endangered this hotel. Tonight, with our attorney's guidance, we will begin the process of protecting Hartwell Grand from outside criminal influence and from unauthorized financial activity committed in Lila's name. A screen descended behind her. Lila felt Dante shift, but she lifted one hand slightly. Not yet. Let Vanessa build the stage high enough to fall from. The first slide appeared bank transfers from the Evelyn Hartwell Trust, highlighted under Lila's name. Gasps moved through the guests. The second slide showed a cropped image of Dante beside Lila in the service hallway, his men behind him. The third displayed a forged authorization document. Lila's copied signature, enlarged for dramatic effect. Vanessa turned toward the audience. Voice breaking. I never wanted this public, but our family can no longer stay silent while my sister is exploited by dangerous people. Lila stepped through the side door before Vanessa could summon fake tears. At first, only the nearest guests noticed her. Then, a photographer turned. Then, another. The whispers spread like fire across silk. Vanessa froze halfway through a breath. Preston went pale. Marjorie's hand clamped around the armrest of her chair. Lila walked down the center aisle slowly. Every step landing on the same marble floor where the tray had shattered the night before. She did not look at the guests who had laughed. She looked at the stage. Vanessa recovered enough to smile with trembling sympathy. Lila, she said softly into the microphone. Sweetheart, this is not the time. Lila climbed the steps without waiting for permission. Preston moved as if to block her. But Dante entered the ballroom behind her. And Preston wisely remembered he had never been brave. Lila took the second microphone from its stand. Her hand shook once before, steadying. You're right, she said, facing Vanessa. This is not the time for another performance. The crowd went completely quiet. Lila turned toward the screen. You showed them transfers from my mother's trust. Show them the full documents. Vanessa's smile tightened. We cannot expose private financial records just because you're upset. Lila glanced toward the sound booth, where Marco stood with Mrs. Alvarez's nephew, a hotel technician who owed Evelyn Hartwell his college tuition. Then I will. The screen blinked. Vanessa's slides vanished. For one heartbeat, there was only the Hartwell crest, gold on black. Then the full bank records appeared, uncropped and time-stamped. Each transfer routed through shell vendors controlled by Marjorie's private accounts and approved by Elliot Crane. A murmur rose sharply. Lila forced herself not to look at her father yet. These are the transfers Vanessa showed you, she said. But she removed the receiving accounts. My name was used as authorization. My money was used as cover. And last night's engagement party, the one where I was ordered to serve champagne while my stepsister wore my dress, who was paid for with the trust my mother left to protect me. Vanessa laughed. Too fast. This is absurd. Anyone can fabricate records. Lila nodded. That's why I brought more than records. The screen changed again, and the bridal boutique invoice appeared, complete with Lila's measurements, Lila's payment, and Lila's initials requested inside the gown. Every eye moved to Vanessa's dress, though it was not the same one now. Lila turned to her stepsister. You told everyone I was jealous of your engagement, but you stood under my flowers, in my gown. beside the man my family pressured me to marry, at a party paid for with my inheritance. That is not romance, Vanessa. That is theft, with better lighting. A few guests drew in startled breaths. Preston stepped forward. His face flushed. Leela, you're embarrassing yourself. Vanessa wore that gown because you abandoned the engagement. You were unstable. You wrote obsessive notes. We have statements. Lila looked at him then. Really looked. Os? His approval had felt like proof she might still be chosen. Now he seemed small beneath the chandeliers. A man made of polish and borrowed confidence. You mean my therapy journal? She asked. The one you photographed while I was asleep after my panic attack. Preston's mouth shut. The screen changed before he could lie. A hotel hallway camera showed Preston outside Lila's room 3 weeks earlier, handing Marjorie a folder. Then audio played. Slightly grainy, but clear enough. Marjorie's voice said, "Use the parts where she says she feels unlovable. People believe desperation when it comes from a girl her size." Allo? Ugly sound moved through the audience. Vanessa lunged toward the technician's booth. Turn it off. Dante's men stepped into the aisle. Not touching anyone. Simply existing as a warning. The audio continued. Vanessa's voice came next. Bright and cruel. After tonight, nobody will trust a fat, desperate girl over me. She'll cry. Daddy will panic. And Preston gets his merger. Charles looked as if someone had struck him. Lila finally turned to him. His eyes were wet. But tears did not impress her anymore. Truth had required no miracle. It had only required him to stop looking away. Then came the final file from the ballroom server camera. The angle was low, half hidden behind a floral arrangement. Exactly where Mrs. Alvarez had known the main system would not reach. It showed Marjorie handing Lila the server uniform. It showed Vanessa pulling the black diamond ring from Lila's collar. It showed the guards moving toward her on Marjorie's signal. Then the video froze on Vanessa's hand, gripping the chain. Her mouth open, mid-insult. Lila lifted her ring hand. This was my mother's. Vanessa called it pawnshop trash last night. But inside it is the DeLuca crest. And tied to that crest is a protection contract my mother signed when she realized my inheritance would never be safe inside this family. Dante stepped forward only then, holding a leather folder. He did not take Lila's microphone. He simply opened the folder and handed the first page to the federal financial investigator, standing beside the ballroom entrance. The room erupted. Not loudly at first, but in panicked whispers as 2 investigators entered with Elliot Crane between them. His expensive suit looked slept in, his face gray with defeat. Vanessa stared at him, as though betrayal had not been the foundation of every choice she had made. Elliot would not meet her eyes. The original contract was recovered from Mr. Crane's office this morning, Lila said, along with forged letters sent to Dante DeLuca under my name. The screen displayed the 3 letters. Then, beside them, a handwriting comparison from a forensic examiner. Dante's people had obtained in hours because fear made doors open quickly in Chicago. Vanessa's handwriting appeared in old birthday cards, boutique receipts, and the sticky note from Crane's office. Make sure the signature looks heavier. Preston backed away from Vanessa. That single movement seemed to wound her more than exposure. You coward, she hissed, forgetting the microphone clipped to her neckline. Marjorie rose, her composure finally cracking. You ungrateful girl. She spat, pointing at Lila. "Do you think your mother was a saint? She brought criminals into this family." Lila faced her stepmother without flinching. "My mother brought protection because she knew what kind of woman you were." Marjorie's eyes flashed. "I kept this family alive. With my money. You would have wasted it. You were too soft, too emotional, too desperate to be loved." Lila felt the old words reach for old wounds, but they no longer fit inside her. "No," she said quietly. "I was a child who wanted her father to choose her. You mistook that for weakness, because weakness is the only language this family taught me." Two officers moved toward Marjorie. She looked to Charles, expecting rescue. He did not move. At last, silence had turned against the woman he had protected with it. Vanessa made one final attempt. She dropped to her knees in the center of the stage, tears spilling beautifully again. "Daddy," she sobbed. Tell them Lila always hated me. Tell them she wanted to ruin me." Charles looked at Vanessa, then at Lila. The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Lila did not beg him this time. She had begged in small ways for years, through obedience, through quiet, through swallowed humiliation, through staying when she should have left. Charles stepped toward the microphone with a shaking hand. "I knew the engagement was originally arranged for Lila," he said. Marjorie gasped. Vanessa went still. "I knew she was told to serve last night. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself scandal would destroy the hotel." His voice broke, "But I let them destroy my daughter instead." Lila closed her eyes. The confession was too late to heal, but not too late to matter. The investigators escorted Marjorie from the stage as cameras flashed with a hunger that had finally found new prey. Elliot Crane followed, already speaking through trembling lips about cooperation. Preston tried to slip into the crowd, but his father blocked him near the aisle. Fury carved into every line of his face. Vanessa remained kneeling amid the fallen pieces of her performance. Her tears no longer useful, because everyone had seen the machinery behind them. Dante stood near Lila, close enough to steady her if she asked, far enough not to claim the moment. Lila turned back to the audience, effective immediately. "I am petitioning to remove Marjorie Hartwell and Elliot Crane from all authority over the Evelyn Hartwell Trust. Hartwell Grand will cooperate with the investigation. Any investor who wants to leave may leave tonight." No one moved. For the first time in her life, a room full of powerful people waited for Lila Hartwell to tell them what came next. When the ballroom finally emptied into chaos, Dante found Lila near the rose arch from the stolen engagement party. The flowers were beginning to wilt at the edges. She touched one petal, remembering how carefully she had chosen them, believing softness could be honored if arranged beautifully enough. "You did it?" Dante said. Lila shook her head. "No, I started it." He reached into his coat and removed his own ring. Black gold, marked with the same crest as hers. For a second, her chest tightened with suspicion. But Dante did not kneel to trap her in spectacle. He knelt because the room where she had been shamed deserved to witness a man lower himself without lowering her. "Last night, I called you my bride before I had earned the right to know you," he said. "Tonight, I am giving the choice back." He placed the ring on his open palm. "Your father cannot choose. Your mother's contract cannot choose. I cannot choose. Only you." Lila did not take Dante's ring that night. The ballroom was still littered with wilted petals, overturned chairs, and the invisible wreckage of every lie that had finally collapsed. But she understood something clearly as she looked down at the black gold in his open palm, a choice made too quickly after humiliation could become another kind of cage. Dante seemed to understand before she spoke. He closed his fingers around the ring and rose without disappointment, only with a quiet acceptance that unsettled her more than pressure would have. "I need time," she said. Her voice sounded raw, scraped clean by the night. "Not because I don't feel anything, because for years, everyone made decisions over my head and called them protection, family, duty, love." Dante nodded. "Then time is what you will have." He did not ask how much. He did not ask what it meant for him. For the first time, a powerful man left space around her and did not fill it with his own need. The consequences came faster than mercy. By morning, Marjorie Hartwell's face was on every local news channel, no longer framed by charity, luncheons, and society pages, but by words like fraud, coercion, and trust manipulation. Elliot Crane surrendered his license before the disciplinary board could rip it from him, and then began cooperating with investigators so eagerly that his own attorney looked embarrassed. Preston Vale discovered that charm was useless when his father froze his accounts, and the merger he had planned to secure through Vanessa dissolved before breakfast. As for Vanessa, she tried one final interview from the steps of a private clinic, her eyes hidden behind sunglasses, claiming emotional abuse, manipulation, and fear. But the clip of her saying nobody will trust a fat, desperate girl over me played after every denial. Sponsors vanished. Friends stopped answering. The same women who had laughed behind champagne flutes at Lila's uniform now posted long paragraphs about kindness, as if hashtags could launder cowardice. Lila did not watch most of it. She spent the first week inside a conference room on the 23rd floor of Hartwell Grand, surrounded by forensic accountants, investigators, exhausted hotel department heads, and stacks of paper that proved how thoroughly her life had been mined for other people's comfort. She learned which renovations had been paid twice, which vendor contracts belonged to Marjorie's cousins, which accounts had carried Lila's forged approval, and which employees had been threatened into silence. Mrs. Alvarez was found 2 days after the gala in her sister's apartment in Milwaukee, shaken but alive, having fled when Vanessa's hired men searched her building. When she returned, Lila met her in the hotel kitchen, where neither of them managed to speak at first. "Mrs.?" Alvarez touched Lila's cheek the way Evelyn once had and whispered. She would have been proud. Lila finally cried then, not from humiliation, but from the unbearable tenderness of being remembered correctly. Charles came to her on the 9th day. He did not arrive with lawyers, press managers, or Marjorie's old language about family unity. He waited outside Lila's office like a man unsure whether he had any right to knock on a door his own daughter now controlled. When she let him in, he looked smaller than he had in the ballroom, stripped of bourbon, status, and the convenient blindness he had worn for years. "I won't ask you to save me," he said. "I won't ask you to forgive me in a way that makes this easier." Lila stood behind the desk that had once been his and felt no triumph, only grief, old and heavy, sitting between them like another person. Charles looked at the black diamond ring on her hand and broke. "I heard your mother's tape. She knew I was weak, and I still proved her right." Lila's throat tightened. "You didn't lose me at the party," she said. "You lost me every time you watched and called it, keeping peace." He covered his face with both hands. But Lila did not go to him. The child inside her wanted to. The woman she had become knew better. "Can I ever be your father again?" Charles asked. The question barely audible. Lila looked toward the window. Down at the Chicago River, cutting silver between buildings. Moving forward, because water had no talent for staying where it was wounded. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe one day we can have a conversation that doesn't begin with what you need from me. Maybe one day I can sit across from you without remembering the way you looked away while they laughed." Charles nodded as if each word struck him, and he deserved the bruise. When he left, he did not ask to hug her. That restraint hurt and healed in the same breath. Lila sat alone for a long time afterward, realizing forgiveness was not a door she owed anyone. It was a key she might use, only if it opened something worth entering. Dante waited even longer than Charles. He sent security reports, legal updates, and once, a box of cannoli from Sofia with a note that said only, "You forgot to eat." He did not send flowers. He did not appear in her doorway with dramatic speeches. 3 weeks after the gala, Lila went to his restaurant herself. The place was quiet before dinner service. Sunlight crossing the red leather booths, where her mother's voice had returned to her from an old cassette. Dante stood when she entered, but he did not approach until she chose a table. "I keep asking myself whether you would have come for me, if not for the ring," she said. Dante sat across from her. No bodyguards close enough to hear. At first, "No. I came for a contract, a debt, and a woman I thought had insulted my family for years. Then I saw you standing there, bleeding, while everyone tried to make cruelty sound reasonable. His eyes did not leave hers. I stayed because I saw how wrong I had been." "That isn't the same as love," Lila said. Dante accepted the blow. "No. It was the beginning of respect. Love came later. When you refused to let my name become another weapon, people used to explain your strength." Lila looked down at her hands. Her body had been discussed all her life, as if it were public property, too soft for designer gowns, too large for society photographs, too much for a man like Preston, too visible when convenient, and invisible when not. Dante had never once asked her to shrink. But not harming her was not enough to earn her. "I don't need a savior," she said. His answer came without hesitation. "Good. I am not a safe man to worship." That almost made her smile. He took his ring from his pocket and placed it on the table. Not between them like a demand, but beside his own hand. "I want to stand beside you. Not in front. Not over. Beside. When you decide whether that is welcome, I will listen." 6 months later, Hartwell Grand reopened under a new charter, a new board, and a portrait of Evelyn Hartwell in the main lobby, where Marjorie's favorite mirror used to hang. Lila renamed the trust the Evelyn House Fund, offering emergency legal and financial support to young women trapped by family control, coercive engagements, or stolen inheritances disguised as tradition. The first fundraiser filled the same ballroom where she had once carried champagne in a server's uniform. This time, she entered through the front doors. She wore deep emerald satin, her shoulders bare, her body neither hidden nor apologized for, the black diamond ring shining on her hand. Reporters turned. Conversations paused. But no one laughed. Mrs. Alvarez stood near the staff entrance, crying openly into a napkin, while Marco pretended not to see. Charles attended quietly, seated near the back, invited, but not restored, present, but not centered. Lila had allowed him that much. Nothing more. Not yet. Vanessa tried to come too. Her name was not on the list. She arrived in a black car with no photographers waiting, wearing a white dress that looked too much like surrender and too much like strategy. Security called Lila before turning her away. For a moment, Lila watched the lobby camera feed from her office. Vanessa stood beneath Evelyn's portrait, smaller, without an audience. Her beauty still intact, but strangely powerless, without someone else's pain to sharpen it against. "Tell her I won't see her tonight," Lila said. The guard nodded. Then Vanessa looked up at the camera, as if she knew Lila was watching, and mouthed, "Please." Lila's chest ached. But she did not change her mind. Vanessa had mistaken pity for weakness once. Lila would not teach her the same lesson twice. Some doors closed, not from hatred, but because the woman on the other side had finally chosen peace over performance. Near midnight, after the final donation pledge had been announced, and the ballroom glowed with warm applause, a reporter stopped Lila beside the Rose Arch, rebuilt for the event. "Miss Hartwell," he asked, "people are calling this a Cinderella story. The forgotten daughter rescued by Chicago's most dangerous man. Is that how you see it?" Lila felt Dante before she saw him, standing a few steps away in a black suit, his expression unreadable to everyone but her. She had taken his ring 2 months earlier, not as surrender, not as payment for rescue, but as a promise they were still learning how to deserve. She looked back at the reporter and smiled. "No," she said. "Cinderella waited for someone to bring the shoe. I learned who stole the house." A ripple of laughter moved through the guests. Warm, this time. Not cruel. Then Lila added, "Dante De Luca did not save me. He stood beside me while I saved myself." When the gala ended, Lila walked alone through the empty ballroom. The staff had cleared the glasses. The musicians had packed their instruments, and dawn was beginning to pale the windows. She stopped at the exact place where the tray had fallen months before. For a moment, she could still see the broken crystal and the champagne. Vanessa's smile, Preston's shameful silence, her father looking away. Then she looked down at the marble and saw only her own reflection, steady and whole. Dante approached quietly, but did not interrupt. Lila slipped her hand into his because she wanted to, because choosing was different from being chosen. "Are you ready to go home?" he asked. She looked around the ballroom that had witnessed her humiliation, her reckoning, and now her return. "I am home," she said, and as the first sunlight touched the black diamond on her finger, Lila Hartwell finally understood her mother's promise. She had never been born to serve. She had been born to rise.